The president needs to take swift and decisive action right now. President Trump, I'm speaking to you directly. Do not take the same mistakes that President Obama had made. The action that you had taken in Khan Sheikhoun to take out the airbase there, that was important, and that was strong. That was a very strong message. But what we need to do right now is to take out the Assad's Air Force.
That Syrian American activist Bassam Rafai with me last week here on the Fox News channel before the airstrikes. As you saw, he looked directly into the camera in an effort to appeal to the President of the United States directly to strike Syria, he said, in the name of the suffering Syrian people. Well, Assad's air assets, warplanes and helicopters were not hit, prompting some to ask if the U.S. and our allies should perhaps next consider another move, such as imposing a no-fly zone over Syria to stop the chemical attacks. Is that possible? And what else can be done? With us now is Moaz Mustafa of the Syrian Emergency Task Force. Moaz, thank you for being here tonight. First, your reaction to the airstrikes.
Well, I want to start off by saying that I am so grateful and thankful for all the American servicemen and women and those of our allies that took this important punitive measure against the evil perpetrated by the Assad regime and its supporters, Iran and Russia. And I want to thank the President for taking a decisive action and showing leadership where it was much needed in taking this step. But at the same time, I believe that more should have and can be done to end. Well, for example, I believe that the President's initial instinct was to go after the entire chemical weapons capability of the Assad regime and the possibility of grounding his Air Force. I think that was the right thing to do, and I think the President should trust his instincts on these things. And I think that National Security Advisor Bolton, I think, was pushing also in the right direction, along with Ambassador Nikki Haley and others that really understand what's happening on the ground. Unfortunately, I believe the delay that was made based on General Mattis's sort of risk averseness that was really not necessary in this way caused this to be less of a powerful of a strike. But I think we should keep the pressure up, and we should leverage this with a comprehensive strategy that brings an end to the killing in Syria once and for all. And we need to confront the Iranian threat in Syria. I cannot say enough how dangerous Iran is there. We have worked hard, even my organization, supporting their efforts against ISIS and in confronting Iran. And I can tell you, Iran is a much bigger problem for the international community as we defeat ISIS.
And how do you get them out? For example, you talk about taking out the warplanes. I mean, they were over in a Russian base. I mean, you attack a Russian base, that potentially could be seen by Moscow as an act of war. You take out they're smart, you know, but at least they're there, and that they may stay there on a Russian base now because they know if they sneak out, you know, we potentially could get them. So what do you do about that? And as you talk about the Iranians, I mean, you're not going to wedge the Iranians out of that country.
Well, I'd like to say that, first of all, in Syria, unlike in Iraq or elsewhere, Syria is a country where its people, by the way, despise Iran. Even those, some of which that may be loyal to the Assad regime, see Iran as a foreign occupation. And the Assad regime is no longer really a government. It's essentially the biggest sort of militant Iranian militia on the ground. As far as what we can do, there are 6 runways that are used to kill civilians that are not in civilian areas that the Assad regime uses. That's something that we could do that could be very helpful in grounding and shutting down the Air Force of the Assad regime as it does this. And we're not looking for a confrontation with Russia. We're not looking for anything that can come to those terms. But what this regime understands is the credible threat of force. And right now, the regime thinks that it can have a military victory, and it has had one for a large part because of the Russian IRGC, Hezbollah, Iranian support that it's had on the ground. But if the regime understands that the United States in its leadership role is serious about a political transition in Syria, and that we back negotiations and we back a comprehensive strategy to end the killing with the credible threat of force, I think we can see Assad sitting down at the negotiating table again.
That is, you're talking about the Geneva process, of course. And let me show you some video finally and lastly. Here's what the Syrians put out. It's propaganda. There he is. He's in the People's Palace. Assad walking to work alone like that's propaganda right there. Like he doesn't have a care in the world, care in his briefcase. It's so funny. I've been there, and when you go to these places, they have the best French food and hors d'oeuvres, and the security guys have like these cheapo leather jackets, and they want to talk about America. They asked if I lived near Central Park. I mean, they were asking me about our country, and they want to come here. What is your message to Assad? Do you think he will ever be in handcuffs before the world court as a war criminal?
I want to tell you one thing that we've worked on is we've helped support a Syrian defector who worked for the Assad regime, who took photos for the government of Assad, 55,000 pictures of men, women, children, and elderly, Christian, Muslim, Kurds, Arabs, that have been tortured to death by the Assad regime and documented by the Assad regime. As a matter of fact, that sits as an exhibit today in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, which I invite everyone to take time and go see. And based on that evidence, that is as powerful as any evidence we have had in recent history of war crimes, Assad and his horrible war criminals and his supporters will face their day in court, even if that may take a long time. But we will never stop the fight for accountability. And the propaganda of the Assad regime, Iran and Russia is the usual. First of all, not a single missile was able to intersect our missiles that we hit there. Russia did nothing in terms of a reaction, neither did the Iranians. And it's really, really important that we confront the Iranian threat in Syria as we finish off ISIS, and we remind the international community that the United States is still here, a leader in the world, and that Assad will face accountability and justice in the near future.
Now, Maz, that certainly is your hope, and the eyes of the world are now on them.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, of course.